This is the story of Daniel, and we have the story box here, and we're also going to use some people of God, and we are going to tell it in the desert. Last week we heard the story of King Solomon building the temple, and the people of Israel were so happy to finally be living in a city. They had finally found a home. They had recovered the Ark of the Covenant, and they were so happy to be able to build a real temple to hold the Ark of the Covenant. The story we're going to hear today is the story of Daniel, and this story happens about 300 years later after Solomon built the temple. So the people of God used to be living in Jerusalem, but something sad happened during those 300 years. They were exiled to Babylon, and so they had to leave Jerusalem and leave the temple that they had built. This is Daniel, and these are his three friends. His three friends' names were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And while they were living in Babylon, they kind of got used to it because it had been a long time. And some of them got jobs in the king's court. Daniel and his three friends got jobs in the king of Babylon's court. And God had blessed Daniel with learning and wisdom and skill. One day, the king of Babylon had a dream. In his dream, he saw a shiny golden figure. But in his dream, a wind came up and blew the figure to pieces and blew it away. The king did not know what this dream meant, and nobody could tell him. However, God allowed Daniel to know what the dream meant. Daniel said that your dream means a time will come when all of the kingdoms of the world will be destroyed, but God's kingdom will last forever. On another day, the king of Babylon made a big statue of a golden person. And he wanted everybody to worship this statue as if it were God. He told the people that whenever they heard special music, they were supposed to bow down and start worshiping. And anybody who did not bow down would be thrown into a fiery furnace. So all the people of Babylon, when they heard this special music, bowed down and worshiped the golden statue. But Daniel and his three friends would not bow down. Daniel and his three friends worshiped the one true God of Israel, the God who called himself I Am, and the God who saved them from slavery in Egypt. So the king of Babylon had Daniel and his three friends thrown into the fiery furnace. But something amazing happened. An angel came into the fire with them, and the angel protected them. Not even one hair on their head was burnt by the fire. The king of Babylon was so amazed by this that he gave Daniel and his three friends a place of honor in his court. Later on, the king of Babylon had another dream. In this dream, there was a huge tree that touched the sky. And it had leaves and fruit, and animals came to live under it, and birds came to live in the branches. in this dream, a voice that sounded like God came and said, "Cut down the tree and let the animals flee and the birds fly away." The king of Babylon called for Daniel to come and interpret this dream too. So Daniel prayed to God and asked him what the dream meant. And God told Daniel to tell the king that the tree is you. So the tree represents the king of Babylon. And the king of Babylon is great and strong just like this tree, but the king will be driven away, and the king will live like an animal all by himself for 7 years. And this dream came true. The king of Babylon was driven out, and he lived like an animal for 7 years. And when he finally came back, he was ready to worship the same God that Daniel and his 3 friends worshipped, the God that saved him from the fiery furnace, the God who calls himself I Am, the God who saved his people Israel from slavery in Egypt. The king of Babylon was now ready to worship this God. After some time, the king of Babylon died, and his son became the new king. But his son was not ready to worship the one true God. One time, this new king even held a feast and used some of the special things that he had taken from the people of Israel that they used to use in their temple, like the incense and the altar, maybe even the Ark of the Covenant. So at this feast, I think God was probably a little upset that his special things were being used for not what they were supposed to be used for. And all the people at the feast suddenly saw fingers of a human writing on a wall. And this new king couldn't read what the fingers had written, so he called for Daniel. So Daniel prayed and he asked God what it meant. And the words read, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. And Daniel said, these words mean that God will bring this king's rule to an end, and the kingdom of Babylon will be divided into many pieces and given to the Medes and the Persians. That very night, the king died. And a new king, Darius, took over, and he did divide the kingdom of Babylon into many pieces. He put 3 rulers over all the pieces, and he chose Daniel to be one of the new rulers. The other 2 rulers that he chose got a little jealous because they knew that King Darius liked Daniel the best, and they were worried that eventually Daniel might rule over them. So they decided to trick Daniel and trick King Darius by getting King Darius to make a law that Daniel could not keep. And this new law was that everyone had to pray to King Darius. You see, they knew that Daniel would only pray to the one true God, and he would never pray to a king. And the consequence they picked for breaking this law was that the person would have to be thrown into a den of lions. Well, they were right. Daniel could not obey this new law. Just like he wouldn't bow down to the golden statue and pray, he would not bow down and pray to King Darius. Every day in his house, he would only pray looking towards the temple back in Jerusalem, and he would pray to the one true God. But one day, some people saw him, and they took him to King Darius and said that they saw Daniel praying to the one true God and not to King Darius. Now, King Darius liked Daniel very much, but a law was a law, so he had to throw Daniel into the lion's den. King Darius was so worried about Daniel that the very next morning he rushed over to see Daniel, and he called out to him. And King Darius was very surprised when he heard Daniel say, "I'm fine. God sent an angel to protect me from the lions, just like he sent an angel to protect us from the fire." So they pulled Daniel out. And Daniel was honored throughout the kingdom, and many people worshiped the one true God. Now, I wonder which part of this story you liked the best. I wonder how Daniel and his 3 friends felt when they were thrown into the fiery furnace. I wonder how they felt when an angel came to protect them. And I wonder how Daniel felt when those other guys tricked him with that law where he could only pray to the king. I wonder what inspired him to be so brave to keep praying only to the true God, even if it meant getting thrown in the lion's den. I wonder how Daniel felt when he was in the lion's den. I wonder how he felt when an angel came to protect him. And I wonder how King Darius felt when he saw that Daniel had been saved from the lions. I also wonder which part of this story might be about you.